Meeting to order at 5:31. I am going to give the land acknowledgement this evening. Ganeshtish to the Tlingit, Haida, and Tsimshian people. We respectfully acknowledge them as the original inhabitants of Southeast Alaska. Bartlett Regional Hospital is located on the
Please
homeland.
enter a conference ID followed by pound.
Bartlett Regional Hospital is located on the homelands of the Akwán. We are grateful to provide services in your ancestral homeland and to be a part of this community.
Okay, Chris Lauderman,
Here.
Amy,
Here.
Max Kurtz,
Here.
Lisa Peterson, here, Al Geiger,
Present.
Amy Solomon Gross,
Present.
Shelley Deering is absent. Excused. John Raster,
Here.
Deb Johnston.
Here,
We also have Wade Bryson.
okay, I would entertain a motion for approval of the agenda.
Madam President, I make a motion that we approve the agenda as written. I'll second.
Do we have any
Are
public
you all
participation?
able to hear me?
Yes, we are.
I did not see or hear any public participation. So while we're getting Matt sorted, I would entertain a motion to go into executive session.
Madam Chair, I move that the Board of Directors of the Bartlett Regional Hospital recess into executive session to discuss matters which by law, municipal charter, or ordinance are required to be confidential or involve considerations of records that are not subject to public disclosure. Possible BRH litigation, specifically a discussion of facts and litigation strategy with BRH attorney. With that, I also would like to say that the board, with approval, would like to allow the president to decide who is allowed to stay in executive session.
Thank you. We're going to have 2 executive sessions this evening.
I'll second. Oh, second.
Thank you, Hal. We're going to have 2 executive sessions. For this first one, I would like to excuse everyone but the CEO and the president. I'm sorry, the board. Thanks to those of you that we excused for your patience in the amount of time that it took for our discussion. Let's move on. The agenda, what did I do with that? Thanks. Okay, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Approve the consent agenda. I'll second.
Okay. No business. Kim McDowell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So for the for ACU 97, med surge was 440, MHU was 19 with a current census of 6, OB 77, nursery 56. ED had 971 visits in November, in December, pardon me, which was up from the month prior. We currently have 5 patients waiting for placement. One of those is waiting for assisted living, one for long-term care, one for SAR. There's a second one that needs SAR, but they need a 1-to-1. And then there's one that needs mental health support placement. And that is the end of my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from Val? Thanks. All right, Wildfire Court capacity update. So,
We're currently at 51 census, as of this morning. And so that's possibility of 61 total. We're looking at another admission next week. And then we have a few long-term care referrals coming through and potentially one from Bartlett for a rehab. 51 currently today.
and how's the staffing going for that?
We are moving our staffing forward. We're staffing to where, with the hopes of having all the beds filled or as many as we can. So that's where we're moving our staffing. We've been doing interviews this week, which we're very excited about. And things are looking up for staffing. We do have travelers in right now that are covering, but we're hoping that with the staffing at the levels they should be in the homes, that people will want to come to work full time because it'll be, kind of things, it won't be a struggle anymore, right? As it was. So yeah, so we're kind of positive about that. Going in the right direction.
Are there any questions for Ms. Kelly? Thank you. All right. On to the action item, the PACS funding request.
So I would like to, Madam Chair, to defer this to Chris Carnes, who is much more intelligent in speaking of all IT. So I'm gonna let him sit in my chair so he can do that.
Thank you.
So last spring, we decided to change our PACS vendor from Change Healthcare over to Fuji. At the time, the total cost approved was $735,440, $250,000 of that being a estimate of hardware costs. Our plan initially on that approval was to leverage our existing server infrastructure to buy additional resource capacity to do that. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize we had a big delay here. So you can go ahead and scan down here. So this is the original estimates. You'll notice $250,000 is just an estimate, but the idea being that we would expand our current server infrastructure with additional blades is what they call them, additional CPUs and RAM. And then we estimated that to be about $200,000. Well, in September, we were made aware by Dell, who is the vendor that we've purchased our server infrastructure through, that the particular system that we have, which is called VxBlock, would be entering end of expandability in 2026. And concurrently, we received our first extended support bill. And the next slide, I believe, will show you the extended support bill. So there were two different invoices for it. One of them is for hardware, one of them is for software support. We initially bought the VxBlock in 2018. This is the first year that we've had to pay these costs. And we were pretty taken aback at the quoted rate. So it made us rethink whether or not it was the best use of $250,000 to invest additional money in a system that is nearing end of life and has a rather substantial support cost. And so in November, we brought the issue back to our executive steering committee and gave them three options, which is in the next slide. Oh, sorry, first, this is our VxBlock. This gives you an idea of sort of how it works, but I don't think it's too relevant to the current issue. So we gave them these four options, which is we figure out exactly how we want to replace the VxBlock. We use that $250,000 that we allocated to secure the system resources necessary to switch over our PACS system. into that investment. And there are multiple versions of how there are some new methodologies by which you can virtualize that we can let for the server infrastructure, or we could simply purchase the Fuji hardware from Fuji and use that, sort of separate out our PAX system into its own hardware. We used an estimated capital cost of $320,000 based on a quote we received back in January of 2024. And at the time, the executive steering committee elected to opt for replacing, for using Fuji's supplied hardware as our hardware solution. And so we reached out to Fuji and asked for an updated quote. Well, the quote we received in December was quite a bit more than the quote we received back in January. So this quote, which is the next slide. Oh, sorry, next slide. The quote we received in December, which is good until February 9th, is for $454,000, so 666. The delta of approximately $204,000 from the initially approved hardware costs in the plan that was presented in April. So we're here asking for an additional $204,000 to cover the delta in hardware costs.
Madam President, thank you very much. I remember when this initially happened and you guys put these figures out there, and I actually personally said, I think you guys are estimating low, we should approve a little bit more. And I believe you told me, no, this isn't numbers, this is what we were told. I totally understand where you're coming from. I think your letter to us or whatever with the explanation was great. I'm glad that we found out sooner than later that the end of life was happening on the PAX system that we currently have. So I really appreciate the work and the diligence that you did with this and the steering PAX system. So thank you, and I understand exactly. And I think you spelled it out for us very well.
Dr. Astor.
My question, so the lifespan of this hardware and software is longer, obviously, than more than a year.
It's 5 years.
5 years, okay,
Yeah.
very good. And then I wanted to hear what our president, just wondering what the president thinks. So, that's okay?
Yeah.
No, you, as the CEO, sorry, CEO, yeah, you're right. Sorry, I misspoke. I was confused. You're a numbers guy, so, and you run the place, so this is your recommendation, right?
This is my recommendation. I mean, basically an option of throwing $250,000. It's only good for 18 months. We're spending an extra $200,000 that buys us at least 5 years. So to me, it's money well spent.
Madam President, as somebody that knows this issue intimately, I appreciate, Chris, your explanation, and it was very straightforward. You can never be 100% guaranteed going back to a vendor 30 days, 60 days, that you're going to get the same call. I appreciate that. I think the only question that I have that this raises in my mind is when you talk about the rest of VX Block being on a pathway to end of supportability, end of life, what can we expect as a board to see how you're going to approach that?
Yeah, that's certainly an issue that we do need to deal with sooner rather than later. There are a couple different models, as I kind of mentioned earlier. We either could replace entirely the VX Block with something that's very similar to the VX Block, where all of the physical hardware exists here. We could do some sort of data center solution where some of it is hosted here, some of it is hosted in the cloud. We also have, there's multiple vendors that we are looking at. And that's something that I think we'll be bringing before you in the spring as we sort of figure out what makes sense and what fits Bartlett's plan for the next 5 years.
So Chris's, if we approve this, when it comes time to have to replace the VX block or something like that, this will be compatible to be able to do that? Or are we gonna need to, again, replace this again?
So no, not necessarily. That's a really good point of clarification, actually, is that this would be a completely distinct system, both storage, compute, and RAM would be completely distinct. And what is nice about that is that included in that $454,000, 666 total commit is support from Fuji. So all management of all of the hardware and software and updates to Fuji, all of it would be 100% handled by Fuji. So it's sort of an advantage. It's not integrated into the rest of our infrastructure, but that's actually kind of a bonus. It buys us time to not rush the decision that Chris is asking about, which is, do we want to go with a hybrid cloud on-prem model? If so, how many processors do we need? How much RAM do we need? I think a lot of these things are becoming clearer and will become clearer in the next few months. Did that answer your question? I thought.
Kind of. So my basic question is that when we need to upgrade again in April, May, or when you're going to come back, will we need to upgrade what we're purchasing now for 452,000, whatever?
This would be a full solution for 5 years.
Okay, that's perfect. So, and it will not be on the cloud, correct?
No, it will be hosted here.
Yes.
Entirely.
Any other questions? Thank you. Any motion?
Move to support the PACS funding request.
Second that.
So we have a suggested motion up there. Can we, Dr.
Oh,
Raskin,
sorry.
that's okay.
Yeah, my suggestion, so I have moved that we approve the additional funds needed as presented. I move Bartlett Regional Hospital Board of Directors approve additional funds not to exceed $210,000 for the PACS hardware.
I just want to make sure, and I second that, and then I just want to have a conversation real quickly. I just want to make sure that $210,000. I mean, do we want to give it 250,000 so in case we have some overruns or anything like that? I mean, I don't want to get stuck in 210,000 and you still need another 50,000. I want to make sure that get this finished and then get to the end line. I don't know what the other.
Just to expedite the process so we can get this off we get this project completed before we're at the 1 year mark. With the first approval, if you want to approve that, so we don't have to come back for additional requests.
Exactly what I'm trying to.
Yeah.
If we would be.
So are you making a friendly amendment?
I'm sorry, no. So, Madam President, I just want to make sure Chris is and Joe, is 250 enough?
250 should be enough. I also have some discretionary
Right, exactly.
within the authorization, so that should be getting as close to.
Madam Chair, I'd like to amend the motion. I'd like to amend it to the amount of 250,000.
Not to exceed 250,000.
I agree.
Is there an objection to this motion? Seeing
No.
none, the motion passes. You all? Okay. Let's move on to new business, and we've talked a lot about the A3 process in our strategic planning, and we today are getting to see that A3 in action and get to talk about some success stories. So, great. Would you like to?
Yes, thank you. Anita, do you have it Oh, there you go. There you go. Okay. Well, hello, everybody. My name is Jeanette Lacey. I'm the Director of Case Management here at Bartlett. And tonight I'm going to talk to you about how we use the A3 process to optimize our denials management for inpatient. So case management is part of the revenue cycle team, and we work closely with patient access services, health information management, and patient financial services. The nurse case managers, they do clinical reviews with our commercial payers, and then they work through denials when we get those. So we really wanted to take a look at using this A3 process to optimize that process and also to quantify the financial impact of the denial management work that they're doing. So the first thing that we had to do was in the process is identify our problem. And so we identified that we had a lack of a comprehensive collaboration between case management and patient financial services. So we didn't have a standardized tool. We didn't have standardized communication process. And so what we proposed was to develop a collaborative working environment. And so at the end of 23, we moved from Smartsheets to Teams, as some of you may remember. I remember very well. And so we took that opportunity to build a collaborative dashboard in Teams that is used by both PFS and case management, where we track our denials. And then we also set up a standardized communication process where we have weekly meetings between case management and PFS, where those denials are loaded into the tracking system. And there's a lot of different components that we're looking at with each of those denials. But we work those denials every week and make sure that we're tracking everything that's going on with those. So some of the root causes, miscommunication previously, not having a good tracking system, and not having standardized review process. So we really wanted to address those issues. We identified our key performance indicator as 5%. So upheld denial rate would be less than 5% of all denials for inpatients. So upheld. So the chart you see on the document up there shows our resolved denials. So we track them by quarter. So what that means is that we had an initial denial, we resolved that denial, and we recovered for the year $1.1 million so far. And we still have a few. Some of the denials can take a really long time to overturn or work through. So we have a few that we've been told they're going to pay, and we're waiting on that. And then we have a couple more that are still in the appeal process. So if those all come through, it will actually end up being closer to $1.4 million in recovery from denial management last year. And we know this because we're monitoring the dollar amount. PFS, I'm asking how much, of this, 2 days were denied and we got those overturned. What were the last 2 days? We're going to put that dollar amount as the amount that we recovered. So we're really trying to have a good handle on that. So this year we really focused on creating this system and tracking the financial impact. And what now we're really moving toward now is what are the underlying causes of these denials? And so I was able to look back retroactively. Anita, could you scroll it down? No, I'm going to keep talking about that little pie chart up there. I wanted to look back and say, okay, what was the cause of these initial denials? And so the majority of them were payers saying lack of medical necessity. But 25% of them were commercial payer system glitches or system problems that we had to continually work with the payer, where they would ultimately come back and say, oh, I'm sorry, that was our mistake. Here, we'll process that for you now. So that was 25% of our denials. And that's a real problem with commercial payers, is that you will see that there are these reasons that they want to give to deny that are not actually clinical medical necessity denials. And then there's a small proportion that are other sort of random issues or that didn't fall into either one of those categories. And so our next steps are to really figure out what these issues are so that we can try to mitigate them from even having the initial denials in the first place. So I do have some outcomes that I'd like to share too from this. There's a lot of data in the tracking tool that we have, but I wanted to share some outstanding data that I thought would be good for you to hear. So yes, thanks, Anita. So last year we had 506 inpatients that had a commercial payer. We had 46 initial denials. 2 were upheld and 11 were rebilled as under observation status. So that gave us a 2.5 denial rate, which is half of our KPI. So I'm quite pleased that we're resolving almost all of our initial denials. I want to give a shout out to our providers that do play a key role in helping us recover denials. So 15 of our medical necessity denials were overturned by physicians who completed peer-to-peer reviews. So the case managers will help coordinate those peer-to-peer reviews. And that resulted in over $500,000 in recovered revenue that would have otherwise been left on the table from denials, from commercial payers. As I mentioned, 25% of our denials were related to payer issues. That could have led to $382,000 that we were denied because of system glitches or mistakes on their end. So far we have taken in $272,000 and we're still working through another 110. So I felt like that was really good information for this board to know about and to see how everybody's working together. Some of the lessons we learned, consistency matters. So our weekly conversations, our weekly tracking, we've really optimized our communication processes and our collaboration on how we're working through these denials. Number 2, do not give up. So we have a color coding system in our dashboard. Denials are either red, yellow, or green. And they're red while they're still in denial. They're yellow once they've told us that they're overturned. We don't turn them green until the money comes in. So we say that money has shown up in PFS and we have it. And so we had one commercial payer glitch in January of last year, $40,000. And back in my mind, I was like, oh gosh, are we ever going to get this money? Are we going to ever get paid? We got paid in December, but it took working through and not letting it go and figuring out what we're going to do with that. So number 3, just because they say they will pay doesn't mean they will pay. Follow all the way through. That's that tracking system. Make sure we've had them say that we're going to pay, and then did that money come in? That money come in? Nope. Okay, let's circle back, figure out what's going on. Let's get that money. So follow all the way through, and then escalate early and often. As I mentioned, 25% of the denials were related to payer issues. When I looked closer at them, I found that 75% of those were one payer. And I didn't see it on a quarterly basis because I would look at the commercial payers and say, okay, well, the denials are falling pretty evenly between these commercial payers. But it wasn't until I looked at this specific focus area of glitches, payer issues, that I found that 9 of the 12 were one payer. And so that really gives us the opportunity to go back to that contract manager and say, why of all of our commercial payers are 75% of these types of denials yours? What's wrong with the system? So those are some of the things that we're looking at doing in the next phase of this process. Did I say escalate early and often? That's getting with the contract managers and saying, these are the issues that we need to deal with. And then number 5, it's not a lesson we learned, but I wanted to highlight, is that we have an amazing revenue cycle team. Tammy Lawson Churchill is our director of PFS. Jane Johnson is under her. We work very closely with her. Rachel Stark in HIM helps with coding and making sure that all that goes through so we can bill properly. And Charity Bucher in PAS, their team makes sure that all of the initial stuff, the foundation and the authorizations get done. And the nurse case managers, they fight tooth and nail to make sure that we're paid for the amazing care that our providers pay to our patients. That's it. Do you have any questions?
So through the chair, so I just want to say that over a brief period of time years ago, I was over case management and I had the honor, I guess, of sitting with this team as they were negotiating on the other side. And I will tell you, you have to have patience, a little bit of thick skin, and learn how to deep breathe a lot because it was challenging. So kudos, we have to do that all the time. It's really appreciated.
Madam Chair, thank you for this, Ms. Lacy. I was just trying to get like a sense of, you mentioned names of the people. How large is the team that is doing this denial recovery? We've got
Well-
4 full-time equivalents. I'm just trying to get a sense of how much resources Bartlett puts in to get this money.
Sure. Well, I can't speak to PFS. But
So what his question is, in this project, how many hours to do this?
to doing the A3 process or denials management in general?
Management. How much did you spend to get the $1 million?
Oh, yeah. So that'd be a good number for me to sit down and figure out. I mean, I have nurse case managers, but that's not all that they're doing, right? That's a component piece of what they're doing. So if you're looking at, proportioning out how much time do they spend on this versus everything else that they do, but then it's also the PFS staff that are making the calls. It is a lot of work because you have to, keep following up, but it's spread out between case management and PFS. So it would be a little bit to sort of try to parse that out.
Any other questions or comments?
All right, Deb, I've got a question and comment.
Go ahead.
Jeanette, first of all, this is excellent work, and kudos to you and your team. I mean, that really is a lot of work to get yourself to the point where you are right now, and I appreciate it. And I guess a couple of things I'd like you to speak to, and I'll just put them out there and then you can respond to them. So if you're at a 2.5% denial rate, which is half the HFMA kind of threshold, are you going to adjust your KPI going forward so that 2.5 will be your new kind of normal?
Joe says yes.
Yeah, so I do want you to speak to that a little bit because I think that's important to monitoring this. But you made a comment about how, some of the, the insurance payers are more difficult than others. And I'm just curious, you hear about the 3Ds, delay, deny, defend in the insurance industry. And are you facing a lot of that? I mean, it's a lot of the time you're spending just because the payers are just, trying to set a kind of a denial bar and making people try to overcome that?
Absolutely. So there's the 25% that I talked about, but if you also looked at the medical necessity denials, so 15 of the 46 had to be reversed with physician peer-to-peer. There's no good reason that a physician should have to get on the call and defend their admission when it's documented well, and we send the clinical data and we explain it, and the patient meets inpatient criteria and they're sick. There's no good reason that the physicians have to call, but they do. And so that's that deny, defend. I mean, and we have really great providers who get on the line and they say, no, this patient was sick, they needed to be here. And we get those overturned, but so I don't have that. So that's even a greater number than the 25%, which was like, oh, we're sorry, that was some problem with our system. So it's an even higher percent than that glitch issue. Yes, the short answer is yes. It's a big problem.
And then the new normal at 2.5%?
I'm really proud of that 2.5%. So the dollar amount that was in the chart, I don't know if you saw that, was $27,000. That was the final upheld
Yeah.
compared to 1.1 at least $1 million in recovery. You know, sure, we'll try to go down to 2%. I don't know if we can go to 0%. I mean, I'll tell you those two denials though that were upheld. One was the payer authorized the admission, authorized that they verified that the patient had coverage. Patient was admitted, we took care of the patient discharged. After discharge, the payer came back and said, oh, they're not covered. So, I mean, we could have done, you know, a Medicaid eligibility, HPE, hospital presumptive eligibility while they're here. They're already discharged, they come back. So that is a payer glitch issue. They should have never verified that that patient had insurance, that they had coverage, but they did. And then they came back and said, oh, sorry, we were wrong. I did try on that one. I said, you should pay. You said they were covered, you should pay, right?
I
You should
guess
pay.
it's an important thing to focus on, and that's the diminishing returns of the small, really hard ones that you deal with. And I don't want to say, okay, now your new threshold should be 2.5, but maybe Joe, could you just speak to that as far as, these KPIs that you're sitting, so you achieve a KPI of, in this case, 5%, you're less than that. Are you planting a flag in that? I guess I'm thinking about how do we know that you guys are monitoring these things, going forward for, you've set a reasonable threshold here, and, in our situation, maybe we can get it less, but we don't also want to expend so much energy on these few items in this case that, we're really, wasting some staff time. And you've been down the pipe on this. I'd just like your thoughts, Joe.
Well, I mean, all of our KPIs will continue to be monitored from all these A3. So when A3 gets finished, that's not the end of the game, but we just continue to monitor. So as we watch that number, if it starts to creep back up, we'll go back and reevaluate and go through the cycle again if we have to. I think that we need to use HFMA national standards as kind of our KPI and try to meet those within a certain degree, right? I mean, if we're exceeding the 90th percentile, obviously we're probably spending too many resources trying to get those last $3. I think there's a sweet spot.
Yeah.
I don't have a good answer for you. We'll have to look at that one a little more in depth.
No, that's fine.
That's what
I
you're
think,
saying.
the sweet spot's a good answer, I think. So.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments for Jeanette? Thank you. Thank you so much.
Sure, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Oh, you and your team. I mean,
And just one more quick thing, with this A3 process, because I know that's kind of what this is. Does this help your team in the revenue cycle? Do you think this is really moving us forward?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it provided a process for us to look at how we could make this better. And it also provided, that motivation of like, we really want to meet these goals and we really want to make this succeed. And so you have a structure for setting that up. I mean, I've been here for 22 years. So it is very important to me personally, but when you have this and then you can bring it back to your team. So when I show this data to the case managers and the PFS team, they're so excited and they're so proud and they really like working on this, and it makes them, feel very energized about the work that they're doing for the hospital. So I think it really makes it a cohesive project and something that people want to get on board with, and they're excited to be part of it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
This is excellent. Thank you.
Thanks for having me here tonight. It's been great to share this with all of you. So thank you.
Thank you.
take that back. Our kudos back to your team as well.
I sure will. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay. Joan? I think with the strategic planning process.
I did have a slide deck in here to go over kind of how we built our strategic plan, the A3 process, how it's developed, some of the steps to go through that. If it's okay with Madam President, I could save this till we go through our board retreat, and as we go through the strategic planning presentation, I'll just do it at that point. Yes, I'm good.
That's perfect. Okay, then we'll move this to the strategic plan, to the retreat. All right, you're up.
Thank you. I guess from medical staff, I don't, do the minutes normally get included? I apologize.
I think we passed.
We did. I jumped right over that. To answer your question, yes, the minutes. They're in the executive session. In the interest of time and with a request from our finance chair, and I should have brought this up when we were discussing the agenda, I'd like to also move this to the back to the finance committee for a discussion. I think there are a few more questions. I'm talking about the delegation of spending authority action plan. So I'd like to, because there were enough questions about it, to send that back for discussion at the finance committee, and it'll come back to us in the February meeting, if that's all right with the rest of the board. Hearing no objection. Now.
So that sounds like the minutes were included. The only real thing, I guess, to kind of bring to everybody's attention here is we are nearing the final vote on our rewrite of the of our rules and regulations and all that kind of stuff. My hope is that, and I have to talk with Alex about sort of logistics of this. There's a couple changes that happened that are very small changes after our last meeting. So we officially had our last meeting. The hope is to either vote on it officially in either February or March, and then obviously it would come to you guys for your review and final vote. I don't think any of the changes really are very significant since your guys' lawyers looked at it, so I don't anticipate there being anything significant changes. But anyway, that's kind of the only big thing to report that will be coming here from that. But yeah, are there any questions on anything in the minute?
My other comment is I agree. There were just a few small changes. They weren't terribly substantive, and I was sitting next to Joe, who was also at that meeting, so I don't really see any issues.
Any success on finding a
No. A vice chief,
vice?
staff, no, there's not been any success on that front. Had a couple people, I think there is still some interest, I think, in the medical staff. I think for a variety of reasons, for some individuals that would be interested, this year is not the year for them to do it. So I don't think that it's a lost cause to fill those positions. Yeah, I'm not sure where we'll end up. Obviously, still kind of talking to folks and seeing if I can twist anybody's arm into doing it for this coming year, but I don't have anything at this moment.
Do you have backup in the event that you're not available?
Alex Malter still, so he's still that outgoing, so he's still available. And then I guess if he was unavailable as well, there's Amy Stressel, who's our secretary, so she's kind of our third person. So there's three of us currently on the group. I guess to this point, so in our bylaws, the rewrite, they would actually be extending out to 5 positions, which the treasurer would be the 5th position. I guess we can't fill 4. We'll see how we can do it filling 5, but I think hopefully that would maybe give a little more redundancy. There's trouble filling specifics.
Okay. Any other questions for Dr. Nada? Comments?
Natalie, welcome.
Thanks.
We're glad you're here and glad you stood up this year to do this. And I know it's a 3-year commitment and it's a lot of work. So we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hey, Deb,
Yes.
I'm remembering the conversation we had at our last meeting about Joe, potentially looking into some options for compensation of this position, and I'm just curious where we are with that.
Yes, please.
So at the last med exec meeting, we actually brought this forward. We talked about it at length. And also, so there was two options discussed, the possibility of compensation. And then the possibility of adding a potential part-time CMO position from a hospital's perspective. After lots of discussion with med exec, we decided I would come up with a job description, bring it back to the next meeting for further discussion. I think the group kind of decided, I think Luke was probably most in favor of keeping it kind of as a voluntary group of people. So they're committed to the hospital, committed to our mission, vision, values from that perspective. So we have talked about it, Max.
So job description for what?
CMO.
So are we then setting aside the idea of either being voluntary or giving our Luke's position some compensation then? It seems like we have kind of three paths potentially, and I just want to make sure that we're really vetting all three of those.
Agreed. The thought process behind the CMO isn't to replace any of those, it's to add administrative support from the outside. So it makes it more appealing to do the voluntary work. So one of the drawbacks for Alex was there's just a lot of effort put in for no compensation. So if we're able to take some of those tasks away with the CMO, maybe it becomes more desirable to volunteer for the med exec. So that was kind of the angle I took with that. And we could pull other compensation surveys to look at it, but we will be discussing that with med exec further and bringing it back to the board.
Okay. So so the idea would be that there'd be consensus with med exec on the path we're going to move forward with, right?
Yes, so I just want to be sure I understand. So did you discuss the possibility of giving a stipend to the?
Yes.
And that's not being pursued? Stipend to the chief of staff, not a paid position?
I don't think I was part of those conversations, but
We talked about compensation
with Alex, maybe, yeah, but I think.
We'll bring it back at the next mag exec now, try to get consensus and direction.
Because there's a big difference between hiring when we went through a process, we're trying to get fewer bodies.
Yeah, we discussed that as well.
Another body.
Does it create layers that we don't want?
Yeah.
So there's pros and cons to every situation. We're just trying to find one.
I just want to be sure that the pros of just a simple approach of just a stipend for the persons that are there. I just want to be sure that gets weighed fairly.
Yeah.
Dr. Raster, not to put you on the spot, but can you participate in that too? I'd appreciate your input on that if you're willing.
I actually should. I was chief of staff a few times. So
Yes.
Joe Roth, I think, and I have the record.
So do you have an opinion about?
Well, I'm old school, and so I just volunteered, and so I lean that way. And but it is, I admit, to the pure logistics, it's getting challenging. And so we're just faced with this reality. So we physicians tend to represent the medical staff at large. So although we're spokespersons, we'd like to get consensus with the medical staff behind us. So I think it's wise to go through med exec, who then disseminate that information to sort of coalesce around an idea from a broad perspective, not just, Alex and Luke in my position. We want the medical staff's position. So yeah, I will, please, if you look me in, I'll vote.
So you're old school, Dr. Raster.
Yeah.
So I guess the question that's posed is we want to make sure we're getting that filled, right, going forward, and that's been a challenge. And so, what's the path forward? And I guess that's what I'm kind of interested in hearing is there a different landing spot than where we are right now?
Yes.
It's not necessarily CMO. It could be a partially compensated position, a chief of staff, and that's what I want. I think we need to have some you know, Hal's bringing up, we just need to have some thought around, you know.
And I have a question as well. Has the, in your assessment, I wouldn't know this, has the burden of the med exec increased over time? The burden of work and because if that's the case, if that's a barrier as well, compensation isn't necessarily going to solve the problem for folks. And their reasoning why they don't want to participate. So I think we need to look at that as well.
I think that it's if I may, I think it's a combination of, the time commitments are a little more. The pool, although our medical staff is expanding, it's actually kind of shrinking in some degree in that we have all these hospitalists and itinerants. And so there aren't as many core people that are just here, that live here. I think that to Max's point, we'll find a way forward. I don't know the exact answer today, but we have to have a medical staff. We have to have a med exec functioning to manage medical care, excellent medical care at Bartlett. So we'll find a way forward. I just want to drag the bigger group in, talk to Joe, our CEO, and we'll find a way forward. It's a great time to talk about it now. We've got time, we've got 11 months, but we'll figure it out. I have faith.
Any other questions? Okay, well, we'll be talking again. All right. Many meeting updates. Planning committee.
Thank you, Madam President. So we did have a planning committee meeting on January 3rd. Our notes or our minutes are accurately reflect what happened on a meeting. I just want to touch a little bit on the CON. We're still working with Joe and the city and the state trying to shop forward to the CON. So hopefully we'll have some more updates on that as well. Talking with our president and Joe, we really want to work on which Joe actually has in here, our master plan facilities and our master plan and our strategic goals. We will be talking about that more at our retreat and going forward. I am going to our staff person, our executive staff person for this is Kim. So Kim and I talked a little bit today. I'll be meeting with her in the next month or so to make sure that we have proper agendas going forward to get our goals met. I don't believe, I know we're not there yet, but I spoke with our president yesterday, and I don't believe that we will have a planning committee meeting in the month of February. We'll probably move it on to March, which will give us some more time to set a direct plan on what the planning committee is going to be going forward and making sure that we're passing everything on to finance and as we go forward. So that's kind of where we're at. Anybody have any questions?
Mr. Chair of the Finance Committee, Finance and
Yeah.
Audit.
Yeah, thanks, Deb. I don't have anything further than what's in the minutes that you have on page 53 of the packet. We did have a presentation about the FY24 audit, and if that's staff to come back with responses to those issues at our next meeting, but nothing too noteworthy. We're continuing to have good financial results. We had a positive November again, and so that's good to see. We're what we've seen in the last several months has continued into the early part of the winter, which is good to see. So that's all I have.
Any questions for Max? The governance committee.
Yes, Madam Chair. Okay, so we met, you'll see there's an action item coming up. We spent some time with the bylaws. It took me a while, but I sent out the revised version to Anita, or no, I guess to Suzette today. And so I think she'll be sending out our latest draft to the committee members. And then we plan to meet, I think it's the 6th, next month, principally over just this issue of finishing up these bylaws. So then our goal would be to get them to the board at our February. If you're interested, that some of the principal changes are mentioned in the minutes of the committee meeting. We get circle back, we've got this revision to the code of conduct. The board approved a code of conduct in the form of an attestation form. And this change just kind of cleans up a little. There's some clerical changes and some of the wording was put into more of a regulatory form. Example, using the word should instead of, or shall instead of should or will or something. And so our committee is asking for the board's approval of this code of conduct and ethics. Should be in the packet.
It's on the.
And what's redlined is just the changes from the draft that we considered before the meeting.
I just have a quick question on the proposed version of the code of conduct and ethics. So you crossed off the word attestation. Isn't it still an attestation because we're making people still sign for it? So would we leave attestation still on there? I don't know.
So the code of conduct stands alone, and ethics stands alone. We'll have an attestation form that acknowledge that we will still sign, that acknowledges that you that each board member will acknowledge that they will have read it and will abide by it.
So I believe, I'm sorry, may I follow up? So I kind of believe that the way that this looks to me, it looks like an attestation form as well.
Madam Chair, I just want to point out in the revised bylaws too, we don't put code of conduct in there. It's referenced to the most recently approved code of conduct and ethics policy, which this was intended to be. Draft bylaws.
So I see what Kenny is saying. The code of conduct and ethics stands alone. The signature at the bottom will be what's distributed once a year to the board as an attestation that they. So what we're approving is what's above the language in the code of conduct and ethics. Does that make sense?
Is that proper procedure? That's all I want to know. I don't
It is
know either way.
in general, you create a code of conduct and ethics, and that's what you live by. And once a year, you ask the board to certify or to attest that they are going to follow it, they understand it, and that they've had no violations of the code of conduct. I have no problem adding the attestation, but the code of conduct and ethics should stand on its own, not as an attestation, but as a policy.
I'm good either way. I just was confused when I read it this morning. This is still the attestation. Why are we taking that out?
So, Mr. Chair, do you have strong feelings about this?
Me?
Yes.
Because it feeds into the bylaws, I want this to pass as a policy. And the signatures down below of no importance to that.
Okay.
Those are just something that will be tacked on at a later time for a different purpose. Well, to strengthen the to ensure that all the board members understand the policy. That's the only purpose for the signature date.
So,
So we can strike that off and pass the policy. And then somebody can put that back on at a later time, just for.
just for the attestation.
Yeah.
So does that,
Again, I don't, either way, I just want to make sure we're doing it proper. So if this is the proper way, and Cal and you say that, I don't have an objection to it.
is there any other comments or is, if we take off the signatures from this policy or this code of conduct and ethics, are we all good with it as what we're approving?
If you take the signatures pages off, I would really have absolutely no problem.
Okay,
And then later on, like say, come back to that.
The matter is a matter of procedure. Shouldn't someone move to amend? it?
Yes.
And then.
Yes.
Then we're good.
Well, I moved to make that amendment. I just don't know how to word it.
If I'm understanding you, you just want to take off everything below,
do we have the,
everything below, the words general public. Is that what you're supposed to signature?
Correct. Take the signature lines off because it's going to be in the policies.
Correct. Take the signature. So that,
yes,
so what,
so do we have a post motion? Oh, no, it came from the, it came,
so it was moved and seconded by coming from a committee. Now, as I understand it, Kenny has moved to amend it. Does he need a second for that? I'm not.
I'll
Yeah.
second it in the interest of time.
yes, absolutely.
I'm sorry.
It was a valid point. Thank you for bringing it up. Is there any objection to approving the Code of Conduct and Ethics as proposed by the Governance Committee and amended here at this meeting? Okay, seeing that.
I'm good.
All right. I think we're good. The quality and compliance meetings, the chair is out of town for a family medical issue. And the staff representative, our chief quality and compliance officer, is also out of town.
If I may.
Yes.
If I could speak, I was there for most of the meeting. And so Gail updated essentially the 2025 compliance policies and procedures. Then we went through a few other general quality compliance issues, such as our infectious disease protocols. There was safety, equipment safety, I believe that facilities management spoke. And these are a series of updated policies. And you can see the red line items. There's some things we do really well. Jeanette Lacey was also there in terms of what do we do for our case management. And so it seemed to me that everything was going along fine. We have no major deficiencies. Things were just simply updated. And so we moved that they be approved. Is that a fair assessment?
It is. Lisa, would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Is there anything you'd like to add? So we have 4 policies in front of you for approval. They've been moved and seconded in committee. Is there any discussion? I'm moving them forward as a group, if that's all right, in the interest of time.
Great.
Okay. We have a motion in front of us.
Sorry to be in motion.
Exactly. This was the motion that was made. So
Okay. Don't you want me to read it out?
you don't have to.
Okay.
Is there any objection to passing all 4 policies as presented? Seeing none, they are so moved.
I'm gonna pare down my report just for the sake of time. I did include a letter in there about compassion and just getting back to our mission, vision, values, and making that kind of one of our goals as we move into this first quarter. As we look at some of our strategic investments, we want to make sure that quality is paramount in everything we do. So I was just trying to highlight that. We'll be discussing that at management team meeting during our town hall meetings with staff, just to make sure that we're rating across the board. It's also something we're going to try to do as we go through our roundings, talk about, compassion, care, and quality as we go. I did bring the Virginia Mason master service agreement to this board last month. I have gone back with them with your guys' request. It is sitting in their ball court right now with legal. And so I'm waiting on their legal team to try to hash through that. So it is in their report. I did have an update this morning from the state on our ED certificate of need. And so I've been harassing them, not harassing them. I've been calling them repeatedly, trying to get someone to talk. It's borderline harassment, I'd say. So this morning I got Daniel Phelps to call me back from the state's office. He said that he had spoke to Deputy Commissioner Ricci and Deputy Heidi Hedberg. And then stated, I gave him the spiel. I told him what was happening with Assembly, how there's appropriation, we needed something by the end of the week. They basically said we were fine living on the CBJ's agenda. We'll have it moved by the end of the week. So I don't know if I'm assuming that means they're going to approve it, and I just haven't got to the paperwork of it. But they said we'd have a decision by the end of the week if they'll leave it on the CBJ's, which is funding. So I think that is approval funding. That's fine. We did have our first ortho clinic this week. It's gone very well. We had an update in the WMU space. We were able to fill all our spaces were filled with the clinic. We actually added 6 additional visits. The views transportation's pretty good. We did have them spaced out, so we were kind of a slower clinic to see if there's any problems within the space or so it went very well. So the intent is the next time he's in town, we're going to cut the visit times in half, so we can both request new visits. That's what he's used to. So far, it's been very well received. I will be speaking at the Southeast Conference Healthcare Panel, February 11th and 12th. It's the second day of the conference. Max was able to get me in touch with, or volunteer me.
Robert Venables.
Robert's actually going to meet with me on Friday and discuss kind of what we're going to do and try to give me some guidance in town. We're going to go participating in that. I'm also meeting with new Congressman Begich on the 18th with Fairbanks and Central Peninsula. They're giving us an hour and a half to talk about the SOLS Act and the importance to our 3 hospitals. And just kind of give our lay of the land to him so he understands where we're coming from. Also use the chance to kind of build that relationship with him as he's new to his role. I got. Is there any questions? Is there any burning questions? That's actually what I wanted to start with.
Burning what?
Burning questions.
I have some.
Okay.
Let's start with Virginia Mason. Is it dragging out? I mean, is this something that we need to spend a little bit of, I'm a little concerned maybe that we haven't gotten that out of their legal department and gotten that finalized, Joe?
So there were some snags. They have the same legal counsel as we do. So we had to go through a waiver process once we got that signed. So that took a little bit to get in place. So we both use Hall Render. They don't use Hall Render for what we're working with them on, but they use Hall Render somewhere else. So I had to get a waiver in place. And so once I got that in place, we've had 2 conversations. I had a meeting with the VP of Strategic Planning from Common Spirit. And so we've talked through a request for, and so it was in his ballpark we met the week before last. So I'll continue to follow up. I sent another email to Tamara today to get a status update.
So you still feel it's moving forward then?
Moving forward, it's just there was a snag with the whole Hall Render thing, I think, which kind of delayed it about a week and a half.
Yeah. The next question is the CON with the state. When we met with them in December, they assured us that by mid-January, we'd have an answer, and here we are, end of January. If we don't have something by next, I just don't want to, I guess I'm concerned about seeing this thing just constantly get kicked down the road and not getting approved, and we're, running out of time on our appropriation and our contract for that ED, and it's important. So is this something that maybe you could reach out to Deb and Dr. Raster on, and we could potentially involve, the city's lobbyist, or, what we need to do to get this thing done?
Yeah. I'll work with Deb on appropriate next steps for that process, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I could also reach out to Jared Kosin. He was able to help initiate some of the processes. He helped with the critical access application we did, so I can see if he got some leverage with them as well.
And then the last item that you touched on was the Souls Act and the new representative, and meeting with him. Where's that? What could you just go back through that, the time and place of that meeting and the subject matter of that meeting?
So the meeting is actually in Fairbanks. We're going to a Chamber of Commerce meeting. It's going to start in the morning. He's going to do a presentation to the Chamber of Commerce, and then we're going to meet at Fairbanks Hospital Memorial. And then he's got it. We have an hour and a half. We've got an agenda put together. We're meeting with, I'm meeting with the CEO from both hospitals, Central Peninsula and Fairbanks, to come up with a strategy on how we're going to approach our presentations. But we each have 15 minutes to kind of present our case and where our hospital is.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Pastor?
Sorry, and to Max's point, it just, I fear politically, it sounded like this Souls Act thing was going to go forward. There's great push, but now with the changes that are going at the national level, it sounds like things are not going to be pushed fast. So we talked about critical access and how much financial reward could be reaped from changing our status. So I want to lean into that still. Just me personally, I think it could be very beneficial so that we don't get bogged down and going through this long run-up process. Now, that being said, I'm going to argue with myself saying, well, our finances are much better, so it's not as critical to become critical access. We've got a little wiggle room, but I think the medical staff was acceptable to critical access and how much it could help. Thank you.
So my takeaway is the next step in this process for the Souls Act will happen by the 20th of March in time for discussion at our March board. So I think that when they move or don't move on the Souls Act, that will be time for additional discussion and next steps. I think that'd be my potential to this.
Joe, when we met with the whoever the cabal was that we met with in December at the state, and that member of Sullivan's and Murkowski's staff were there, they said that there was one or two more opportunities potentially to get the Souls Act passed this year, and to follow on what Dr. Raster said with the changes that are, they literally suspended all payments on grants today. It doesn't certainly lend itself to optimism that we're going to have the Souls Act get passed. If anything, it's the opposite. And I would say that critical access is still critical, irrespective of the recent positive results we've had. There's so much upside to us having cost-based reimbursement for outpatient services that it's just critical that we pursue that if we don't have Souls Act. I mean, that was a conclusion we came to, and I don't think there's been any change to that. And so keeping our eye on that ball, I think, is important, that we let them know that we need the Souls Act. Otherwise, we're going to have, pursue this waiver, this community size waiver, and get critical access done. Right?
I agree. The timing of it and whether we want to wait for those additional steps is going to be the question in front of the board. I want to go through and do a comprehensive evaluation to make sure everyone understands the implications of this decision, because we are giving up the demonstration when we move to critical access as well. So, I mean, there's a lot of factors.
Yeah.
Also, Madam President, also, I'm not 100% convinced that the commissioner and the DC are on board with giving us that waiver. That was kind of my feeling. So I think we really need to push and let Joe really fight for that Souls Act. It's with the legislative delegation.
I'll withhold my commentary about that.
I know exactly how you feel. I feel the same way. I think that that's.
Are we ready to? We have more discussion about that, the Souls Act. Thank you. Move on to home health and hospice services.
Madam Chair, I apologize. Heather was here earlier, but she was up all night doing patient care. So I told her I'd give a brief report and bring back any questions. So currently there for home health, there's 29 patients on service with 2 pending admissions tomorrow. And on the hospice side, they have 4 on their service with 1 admission pending tomorrow. And their average length of stay for Q3 was 20 days. So they did have some deaths during that period of time. So that affected them stay.
Any questions? Home health hospice? In the report that there was a fair amount of outreach being done.
Through the chair, yes, they did do a fair amount of outreach, and they have a bereavement group that's going to be started actually, it was on January 21st, and they've been doing in-services at BMOC and Southeast Radiation Oncology. So they've done a fair amount of community outreach.
Wildfire.
Yeah. We kind of talked about the census a little bit earlier. We've got some more detailed numbers up there. I thought I'd just bring kind of some focus areas for the last month. I feel like I was just here, like this is how fast everything is going. There's a lot of work that's going on. Again, just to briefly mention, kind of looking at the staffing model and just adjusting and tweaking where we have staff members placed, keeping that quality of care central. That's the goal, right? And so it's been very exciting. I feel like we've heard some positive feedback from the staff at Wildfire Court related to where we're going with staffing. And they're just little tweaks, nothing major to report on that, but just, where we're placing people. And so I'm excited for that feedback. I'm excited for the staff and for the residents and getting everyone back into a really great rhythm over there. We are still looking kind of at our long-term care patient ratio versus our rehab patient ratio. That's something we'll continue to look at and kind of find that good spot for us as far as where we need to be with that. Right now, we're just wanting to get admissions in the door. And so that's kind of where we're focused on the staffing. The staff is working incredibly hard over there. There's been a lot of staff working a lot of shifts. And I've looked at as far as October 1st. And so I'm really proud of everyone over there for all the work they put in our full-time staff members. Just the hours, it's amazing. Like I've been looking at everyone's hours and they're putting in a lot of work. So, so that's kind of some of the highlights. That's been our focus the last month. Just really trying to get that stable with staffing and then eventually looking to see, what we want to present here at the board meeting from Wildfire Court. So are there any questions I can answer? All right, thank you.
Okay. Ms. McCormick, welcome.
Thank you. Well, I looked after I presented the report, I looked at Maria's old reports and went, wow, I think I spoke a little bit too much. She just had like 6 bullet points. So I apologize for this, but I realized that I can get a little wordy at times. So I won't go into all of these, but essentially we just had our first board meeting for the Q4 board meeting on the 21st. Director Mark Troopin resigned from the board last week, and we're looking to fill some extra board seats. I think we've got 2 or 3, I believe is what we're looking for. Maria resigned in September 2024, and lucky them, they got me in December. So whether you like it or not, you got me. We started right off with the tree lighting holiday party. We had some really good communication actually with Wildflower Court. Some of the residents really liked. We brought them some little chocolates, and then we actually took them around to some of the other places in the building, and the different departments really appreciated that. So that was nice. We also assisted with the home health fundraiser for the Light Up the Life night. That was really fun. It was a beautiful event, and the cafe just knocked it out of the park with the food too. They did a great job. Blue Heron Gift Shop is overall doing better. I guess over the past 3 years prior, it wasn't doing so well. We were kind of in the red for a little bit, but it looks like they're on an uptick now, so we're doing pretty good. We do want to encourage our Bartlett staff to continue using the coffee shop. Their numbers are down and their leases, we're going to be talking with them on how we can make them a little bit happy in there. We don't want to lose the coffee shop because I know there are people. Edelman Scholarship Spring disbursements went out all through the first week of January. Currently have 12 students that are continuing to receive funding for their education. And then the biggest growth in those areas have been nursing, pharmacy, nurse practitioner, and physical or PA careers have delivered the better rate of returning at this point. The foundation was able to gift $5,000 towards the purchase of a new bladder scanner for CCU. Great. We are collaborating with Juneau Community Foundation and the Foundation for the End of Life Care to continue to raise hospice funds. We had a very long meeting last week. I can tell Heather is very overworked. She's got some bags on her eyes, so I can tell she's tired. But they've been doing really great over there, and I really appreciate listening to that and just kind of hearing how that program's been working. We're exploring some other partnerships with some of the other nonprofits, and we're going to be focusing a little bit more on stronger donor relations, and we're going to get into a little bit more digital fundraising this year. Storytelling, because I think that we've got some really strong stories to tell here at Bartlett, and I think that that's kind of the future of where we're headed. And we're working with some of the other departments. Of course, being the new person, I kind of got hit up by every department that wants money as soon as I arrived. So we're kind of filtering through those. We'll be having a finance committee meeting here shortly and kind of going through some of those. Any questions? I spoke really fast. That was less than 3 minutes.
In the past, there's been a fair amount of turnover in the assistance position. How are you doing with that?
We don't have an assistant currently. I told the board that actually I want to kind of get my feet underneath me and get the lay of the land before I tell someone what I need. And so once I can kind of get my job figured out and what I need, then I'll be able to bring in an assistant. Sounds like more of like a volunteer, not a volunteer assistant, but someone a little bit less time, maybe not a full-time, part-time position. Just something that I can get some help here and it's probably the best suited. Especially if we have an event or something happening big.
The other?
Deb, if I could, Melissa, I was really happy to see you take this on. Thank you for doing that. And getting your board full is important. Of course, you know, it's the responsibility of your current board, Kenny, to recruit the new board members. So I'm curious. So Hannah Mitchell was executive assistant there, and she's gone now? I thought she was still there, no?
No.
She moved down about a year ago, Max, at least.
Oh, has it been that long? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've had a couple of short-term people in there, but they haven't really been there very long, so.
And at the board meeting, I went to the board, I am on that board, and we did talk pretty extensively about the need or the non-need for the executive assistant, what Melissa's looking for. So she really has a good game plan on getting her feet underneath her and to be able to make sure that she knows exactly what type of job description she'll want for the executive position. Or again, she said she might just want someone just for events.
I had one more question for Melissa. So Kenny, and I think it was Kenny, Deb, and I met with some of the foundation donors here several months ago. And are you still, I guess I'm just, maybe you don't need an answer now, but we need to make sure that we're continuing to strengthen that relationship that we have with those larger donors. And I just want to make sure that that's, I thought we had a good meeting when we met with them there in the boardroom with Maria. And I just want to make sure we're continuing that conversation to the extent we need to.
When was that meeting?
It was during our process when we were trying to decide what the hospital core services were and weren't. And some of the donors were concerned with our choice to close down the rural behavioral health
Right.
and that purposes. And I think that it was a really good meeting with them. We really were able to explain, and I think for the most part they understood. They completely agree, but they did understand. And I know that right now, you know, there's a lot of issues that are going on in town, especially when the major fundraising portion of the foundation happened. You know, we had the glacier outbursts and stuff. So, you know, people were really careful on where they were, you know, donating their money. So I think this year going forward, we can, you know, you'll do a good job going out there and getting some outreach from our community.
I could do a
Yeah,
personal
if-
fundraiser. My house was flooded too.
If Lorraine's still on your board, Lorraine was part of that meeting. Lorraine Durden.
Yes, she's been out of town though, but I'm gonna have a little meeting with her one-on-one when she gets back in town. She's on a
Yeah.
cruise or something.
Yeah.
More questions for Ms. McCormick? Thank you. Yeah, that was not too much.
I talked really fast, so
You did.
I got through.
Okay. Bryson,
Madam Chair, I don't have a report, but as when I listened to the whole meeting tonight, if you guys are having discussions with Murkowski, Sullivan, or Beckich's office, including any of that information for the certificate of need, but any letter that you might have from a lawyer, I would make sure that that is also going to the delegation so that they understand the challenges that you guys are going through. That's all I have for you tonight. Thank you.
we are bumping up against time. I do have a couple of things that I want to say. This is my first month as the board chair, and a fair amount has happened, and I think for the first time in a while, we actually had an onboarding process for our two new board members. Welcome to you both. And thank you for applying, being willing to help us here at the board members. This is also our first month of the combined committee meetings, and I think it went pretty well. Finance committee is not finance and audit, so instead of the audit being presented at the audit committee, with the combined committee. So I think it's going pretty well. This month, quality and compliance was mostly quality because there was a heavy lift to get those new plans up, but soon we'll get to both compliance and quality. And we're about to roll into the budget process for the staff will be rolling into it. So we'll be hearing more about that. And then we talked about the bylaw rewrite for the board. It hasn't been updated in a while. One of the immediate pressures is we have changed the committee structure, which is outlined in the board. I'm sorry, in the bylaws of the board. So the goal is to, as Hal said, get it before this group for the February meeting. For the first reading of it, we'd like to approve it in the March meeting so that we can get on the assembly's agenda for one of their 2 February meetings. I'm sorry, April meetings. To get approval from the assembly. And that is the end of my report. Okay. I am going to note that it is now 8:21 or 8:20. We have a hard stop according to our bylaws, 8:30.
Madam President, I make a motion that we extend this meeting to.
Second that, I'm sure.
Is there any objection to?
Sure, everybody objects.
Well, okay, that being said, let's move on to the board calendar. So credentials committee doesn't change. We have governance committee is meeting on the 6th. And does that still? Nothing has changed.
Nobody,
Which is Thursday, 2 days from now.
no, not all of it.
Or no, it's another week. Yes, it is. I'm trying to move too quickly. Planning committee, we just discussed that we won't have a planning committee meeting this month. That's is the 14th still good for the finance committee?
Yep.
Okay. The board meeting, I would like to propose that I haven't told you about this. Giving me the stick. Joe and I just discussed it a minute ago.
It's a hallway conversation.
We would like to move it back to Thursday, the 20th, if possible. Both Gilmore Head, who is the Chief Compliance and Quality Compliance Officer, and I will be out of town. And this will, on the 25th, we're gone the 23rd through the 20th, returning on the 20th, into town on the 26th. And Joe will be our CEO will be out on the 26th, the 20th. So is Thursday, and somebody else is out on the 21st. We don't want to do it on Friday anyway.
Madam Chair, is there any way that we could do the 19th instead of the 20th? I'm gonna be out of town. I'll be able to log in, I'll be in another meeting.
If it was the question, the 20th.
The 20th, or the 19th.
I'm unavailable.
You're unavailable,
Unavailable 20.
and the 19th.
That's fine.
I could do 19th or by the 20th.
This way. It's work for me either. So 19th is good for everybody. My twins. Okay. Somebody's got.
There's not much you can do about this. It's my 27th wedding anniversary. We're going to be out the 9th through the 27th.
The 9th through the 22nd, is that what you?
27th.
Oh, Jamie will understand. Just get on a Zoom.
19th.
Yeah, we do.
A lot of celebrating.
Yeah, sure. One more other suggestion. We want to keep it on a Tuesday, or we want to do it on the 18th. I mean, it's just another suggestion.
That's the other Fairbanks, but
What's that, Joe? I'm sorry.
I said that's the day I was presenting to Begich in Fairbanks.
Will you be back on the 19th?
I'll be back on the 19th.
So does the 19th work for everyone but Chris? Max, does that work for you?
Yes.
Okay. 19th. All right. I would entertain, actually, I would entertain motion to go into executive.
Comments and questions?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Madam Chair, the Board of Directors of Bartlett Regional Hospital recess into executive session to discuss several matters, including which by law charter or ordinance required to involve consideration of records that are not subject to public disclosure, specifically the credentialing report, medical staff meeting minutes, and patient safety dashboard. And Madam Chair, I ask that you be allowed to select which staff to leave in the executive session.
Second. We will go into executive session and I would like the senior leadership team to remain in the room.
Show you my floor.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I move that we accept the credentialing report.
You know, objections, the credentialing report will be accepted. I did skip over one item. Are there any board comments or questions? Before we move into session. Seeing none, by golly, we did it 5 minutes after.
Congratulations, Madam President. Great meeting. The next meeting is February 8th.
Our executive session.
Yes.